Hi everyone, welcome back. Now we're going to study the renal blood flow. Okay, and then the renal blood flow, we're going to see how to calculate it and a little bit of the physiology. So before we continue, let me just share this with you. And so it is Romans 12:10, and the Romans 12:10 read as follows: so love one another with a brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. Okay, and now so RBF, so renal blood flow. So what is a renal blood flow? The renal blood flow basically is the volume of blood that flows through the kidney per unit time. So basically, don't forget that is first the volume. Renal blood flow is a volume of what? Just like the word says. So it's blood flow is the volume of blood that flows through the kidney per unit time. That flow to where? To the kidney. Renal blood flow. So a volume that a volume of blood that flows through the kidney. This is renal blood flow per unit time. Okay. Now, this is important that we keep in mind. So, and then the renal blood flow is going to be dependent upon the pressure difference between the renal artery and the renal vein, as well as the resistance in the renal vasculature. So remember that the kidney has some. So let's just say here, and so let's just draw this kidney here. So this is your kidney, okay? So it's your kidney. Your kidney is going to have so it's going to have different structure inside, but it's going to have the renal artery, okay, that go to the kidney, and also it's going to have different vessels inside, okay, going to have different vessels inside, all those things, and also it's going to have the renal vein. Now, so the point here is that the renal blood flow, that this one that we are talking right now, it is dependent on the pressure that goes through the renal artery, for example, which is this one, or that go through the renal vein. Okay, let's just draw the renal vein here on the side, okay, that we don't get confused. And then I'm going to change the color of the kidney so that we just keep it in mind. So I'm going to draw it just do it black, okay, so that we don't get confused with the vessels. Okay, so now this renal blood flow, if you have a high pressure or low pressure, it is dependent. So depend of your pressure in those vessels or in the renal vasculature that is here inside. So on the renal vasculature that is inside, so that depends. Now this renal blood flow is tightly regulated by mechanisms within the kidney. So that means that it is not just that. So there are also mechanisms that regulate this the kidney blood flow, okay, I mean the renal blood flow. Now it is so those mechanisms so that are in the kidney, so are going to modulate the renal vascular resistance to what? To keep the renal blood flow constant over different changes of the blood pressure, okay? So could be any wide range or narrow range. So but the most important is that you keep the renal blood flow constant, okay? Should be constant, the renal blood flow. Now if there is any change in if there is any change in the renal blood flow, so the could be that the vessels dilate or constrict, depend, but the most important we keep constant, okay? So constant renal blood flow, don't forget that. Now the mechanism, so we are explaining right now how that happen, okay? Now also this renal blood flow, we can calculate it, okay? How we can calculate the renal blood flow? I'm going to write down the formula here. So the renal blood flow, you have RBF, renal blood flow, equal to so we're going to do it just like this, okay? So in the numerator, we're going to have the renal artery pressure. So I'm going to abbreviate it, renal, some of those were artery pressure, minus the renal vein pressure, okay? So minus the renal vein pressure. Okay, so do you remember that all those is part of the mechanism of the regulation of the renal blood flow? So you need to calculate this. So you take the pressure of the renal artery minus the pressure of the renal vein pressure, and then you're going to divide it over the renal vascular resistance. Okay, so over the renal vascular resistance. Okay, then you calculate that, and with that in mind, so you can have results. Okay, now I'm going to mention here, so now I have a question for you. So how do you think that we can go and measure the renal artery pressure, the renal vein pressure over the renal vascular resistance, while all those things are happening inside of the kidney, and the kidneys are in our cavity? So I think, and it is an invasive process. So in theory, so this is that we should do, but we can do something more simple because we don't want to do invasive process or unnecessary invasive process or difficult process in patients when we're exposing patients to more danger. So what we do, so we need to do something more simple. Okay, so let's just go more simple. So basically, remember that through to the renal blood flow, that is a complete blood volume. Okay, so all this complete volume is going to flow through the kidney per unit time. Okay, now this renal plasma flow, now we switch. So do you remember we're talking about the renal blood flow, which is the complete blood flow that go through the kidney, because the blood contains everything. But now if we go and we take, I'm going to do a square here before. Okay, so if we come and we take the renal plasma flow, basically this is the plasma volume. But now how I can calculate the plasma? So the plasma, it is easy, because the plasma, it is the blood minus your erythrocyte. So one time you remove the erythrocytes from the blood, so you have plasma. So this plasma also can flow there, and then that can flow through the kidney to unit time. Okay, and then this renal plasma flow can be calculated, so because it is easy to calculate using clearings. Okay, so we calculate the renal plasma flow using clearings, and then so the clearance of the pH para-aminohaperic acid. Okay, so para-aminohaperic acid, so we measure with that clearance. Well, so but to calculate this, we have a formula, and it is as follows. Remember first how I'm going to just mention again. So you have your blood, but you want your plasma. So how you're going to do? So you are going to remove your erythrocytes from your blood, and then you're going to have your plasma. Okay, this is the results. Now then I have my renal plasma flow, and then this renal plasma flow is equal to the para-aminohaperic acid clearance. Okay, and then this one is equal to what? I'm explaining the formula. Is equal to the urine. I'm going to have urine here. I'm going to have urine, and it's going to be one numerator and another denominator. So I'm going to have in the urine, but in the urine I'm going to look for the PAH, which is the para-aminohaperic acid. I'm going to write it down here that we done para. Okay, it's a amino. Now hyperic with two P's, hyperic, and then acids. Okay, so this is hyperic acid. Well, this one, the para-aminohaperic acid, which is in the urine, is you're going to multiply by the urine flow rate. Okay, by the urine flow rate, and then you're going to divide all those things by the plasma PAH. Okay, so let's just do simple. When we put a name, for example, we are doing a specific here, the para-aminoheparic acid from the urine. So that means that usually when we do this, so if we are not going to use again the para-aminoheparic acid or another thing, so we don't usually put in a specific place. But so to remember this is easy to remember. So basically you can just create the formula just like this one. I'm going to write the same formula, but you create in the PAH, okay, and you write here times, okay. Now all this, so I have two PAH, one come from the, because the first one that I want to know is the clearance, okay. So and then because the clearance, so the numerator is going to be the urine, so urine pH, in the denominator is going to be the plasma pH, and then the times is going to be how so the urine, how is the flow rate, okay, because you know that the urine has a flow rate. So I think that probably this is so it is easy. So putting pH on the top, putting pH on the bottom, and then urine, and then plasma on the bottom, and then the top, because you're talking about the urine, so you check the flow rate. Okay, now basically we're going to see so one more point here about this, and we're going to explain a little bit more about hematocrit. Okay, so all those things that I'm saying, so at the end, so just like building a puzzle, so you won't put one piece here, you put one piece there, and then at the end you say, okay, now makes sense. Yes, so hematocrit, what it is, so basically the hematocrit is the fraction of the blood volume occupied by erythrocyte. So I'm going to, so hematocrit is the fraction, okay, of the blood, and then that is going to be occupied by erythrocyte. Now this fraction of the blood volume occupied by the plasma is the equivalent to, so what is the equivalent of this one? So occupied by the plasma, 1 minus hematocrit. Okay, now do you remember that when we start here we were talking about the renal blood flow here? So now, but we were mentioning that it is an invasive process, all those when we check the renal artery pressure and all this here. So all this is invasive. Okay, do you remember that we were saying this is invasive? Yeah. So but now I would like just to mention one more point here, so about the renal blood flow. So this renal blood flow can therefore, can also, this renal blood flow can be determined by dividing the renal plasma flow. So that means that if you remember, so we don't want this process, this one we don't, okay, so we don't this one because this one is invasive. So we go for alternatives, so we went to the renal plasma flow. But now one thing I have renal plasma flow, I can think in hematocrit. When I think in the hematocrit, I think in the fraction of the blood that occupied by erythrocytes. So when I'm going to take 1 minus a hematocrit, which is right here, and then this renal blood flow can be determined by dividing the renal plasma flow by the fraction of the blood volume occupied by the plasma. So I'm going to write the formula. So you have your renal blood flow, okay, because you want to calculate the renal blood flow equal. So and then again, so we're going to divide it. We have numerator and then we have denominator, and so the renal blood flow, you're going to take the PAH clearance, okay, this pH clearance, that this PAH clearance is the one that we saw right here, okay, so because we were calculating this one, pH clearance. So one time we have these results, so now we want to calculate the renal blood flow without being invasive to the patient, okay, and then you take your pH clearance and then you divide it by your 1 minus your hematocrit, okay, and then all this process to give you the renal blood flow. Okay, and the just to remember that the renal blood flow was basically all the volume that go through the kidney but in per unit time, and then so we can calculate it at the end with go with those process with this. Okay, so probably that doesn't look good. Okay, let's see. Yeah, with that. Yeah, now we can continue enjoying, and remember that all those things are formulas, and then when then we need to add numbers to those formulas, substitute. Okay, but the most important, we understand the big picture, then it just add the numbers. And yeah, so basically it's that, and thank you so much, and remember that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. God bless.